We're focused on criminals. We're focused on, if you look at MS-13, but when people come into our country, we take those people out, and we take them out very legally. They all have papers, and it's a process, and I have an obligation to do it.
Welcome back. That was President Trump this morning talking about an upcoming nationwide roundup of undocumented immigrants, which he originally announced were going to begin more than 2 weeks ago. Now the president says those raids are scheduled to start on Sunday. Immigration and Customs Enforcement officials, ICE, will begin looking for some 2,000 immigrants under deportation orders in at least 10 major cities from Los Angeles to New York. Well, one of those cities is Atlanta. Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms joins me now. Mayor Bottoms, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Let me start with what President Trump said. He said that most mayors want these raids. True or false? Do you want this raid?
Absolutely false. And I doubt that he's spoken with any mayors. I speak with mayors on a regular basis. We communicate via text, telephone, and I've not heard a single mayor say that they are interested in these raids, nor do we need these raids. And he mentioned MS-13. I meet with my police chief multiple times a week. Not one time has she mentioned that we need assistance with a gang through ICE coming through our community. And so it's another distraction. It's inhumane, and it's not needed, and it's not helpful to our communities.
Do you understand why he would pre-announce it? I don't. Here's what I can't quite get my arms around. If there are people you think are a danger to the country and there's deportation orders, why would you announce that you're coming?
Well, it makes me wonder, what distraction are we working on this week? We have a president who's a master of distractions, and I'm sure there are many conversations he would rather us not have right now, whether it be the labor secretary or whether it be Iran or any number of other issues facing this country, real issues facing this country. And it's just extremely frustrating as a mayor. Atlanta is a welcoming city, and we have a very large and vibrant immigrant community. And even outside of that, my 8-year-old son asked me, was he born in America? And he asked, was his 11-year-old brother born here? Because he's afraid that our family will be separated. So there's anxiety that's being created, not just in our immigrant community, but with anyone who has passion, compassion, and concern for human beings.
If you trusted this administration, and I take it you don't fully trust how ICE is doing this, but if you did, what would be the proper way you would want to have the federal agencies interact with the city when it came to, if there were deportation orders, there are people that have been adjudicated and said you cannot be in this country anymore. How would you see as the most effective way to communicate with your city, with you and your city leaders and your law enforcement people to have that dealt with?
Well, certainly not via Twitter. We hosted the Super Bowl earlier this year. There was cooperation with our federal partners to make sure that our city was safe, and responsible law enforcement operates that way. We coordinate, we meet, etc. Now, let me be clear, as it relates to immigration, our city does not support ICE. We don't have a relationship with the U.S. Marshal Service. We closed our detention center to ICE detainees, and we would not pick up people on an immigration violation. But it's important that we know what's happening in our communities, where it's happening. What happens when our 911 calls start coming in? We don't have any point of reference as to where they are looking to pick up people, and it creates unnecessary chaos, and it's not helpful to our city. I'd much rather those resources be put towards something that we actually need, and perhaps the president would know that if he bothered to communicate with the mayors in these cities.
What, at this point, do you think ICE is, I mean, you talked about you've basically decoupled any relationship between ICE and local officials in Atlanta. Is ICE salvageable as a working partner with the federal government, or do you think it needs to be either abolished or massively reformed?
I think it needs to be massively reformed. We ended our relationship with ICE because we were concerned that Atlanta would be complicit in the family separation crisis, and we did not want to house any detainees in our city facility. We did that last year. I think that it's always useful for us to have a healthy relationship with our federal partners, but it is extremely challenging when you have an unhealthy and unhinged president.
I understand your lack of trust with this administration. We've got a lot of these folks sitting in these horrible conditions at some of these migrant camps. At some point, there's been some talk. Do you take them to some cities that might welcome them temporarily or something like that? What role would you want Atlanta to play if the government said, you know what, we can't keep these migrants in these detention camps. We're gonna wait. We're gonna find other places for them to go. Would Atlanta welcome?
Chuck, I'll tell you, Atlanta does not have a facility where we would cage children and that we would house children. There needs to be a bipartisan conversation, an effort to address meaningful immigration reform. This is not the way to do it, and we are compounding this. We already have a humanitarian crisis happening at our border, happening on American soil in these facilities, and to compound this is unnecessary. And certainly, as the leader of Atlanta, I want to be a part of a conversation that will give us meaningful solutions. But to say that you are coming into our city and that you are going to pick up people in the middle of the night, right, separate even more families, that's difficult as a conversation starter.
Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, I know this is going to be perhaps a long weekend. Maybe it's more bluster from Twitter than actual. We shall see. Or maybe it is a rough weekend. Either way, I know it's going to be a long weekend for you. Thank you for coming on and sharing your views. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Hello, YouTubers. If you're watching this, it means you've checked out our channel, so thank you. Now do me a favor, subscribe by clicking on that button down there. Click on any of the videos to watch the latest interviews and highlights from MTP Daily and MSNBC. You can get more Meet the Press content every morning in the First Read newsletter. If you're tired of content that you don't know anything about where it came from, you don't have to have that problem with us. NBC News, MSNBC, MTP, and the Meet the Press mindset right here for you on YouTube. Subscribe now.